Hey guys, how's it going? Marcelo here.
And Weston.
And welcome to Trash Talk. So this is the last of the first 5 episodes of the new arc, and then after that we will be going off on a quick break like we've been saying for the last couple episodes, and we will come back. So that's really awesome. And the game we have today is another reboot, Legend of Spyro. A New Beginning.
It's time to unleash the true dragon within you.
The Legend of Spyro, A New Beginning. Rated everyone 10 and up.
So here's the box cover right here.
Sweet. We'll be going over it in a little bit.
And over here, we'll go more into it.
So the game came out on October 10th, 2006 from Sierra and Chrome Studios, and if this, like what you said earlier, is the reboot to the original Spyro the Dragon made by Insomniac, which came out in 1998. Spyro debuted, that's the right way to say that, in 1998, so pretty neat. Story time.
Alright, so unlike the first game, the first Spyro game in which Marcelo actually had me play, this one takes more of a serious tone with the story. As we kind of go over to Spyro's coming of age and what he finds out what he is, and what he has to do to get back to his roots.
Yeah.
So for this game, from what I could recollect, it's him more learning about his roots. How he's a dragon and all that, and how he's like gonna save the dragons and all that. So
yeah, if you want to go a little more specific, not to go over the whole entire plot, but a little more in depth, is that as the wise fire dragon Nidus tells him, every 10 generations, I think, or so, a new special purple dragon is born. So Spyro is that dragon, and told in flashback at the very beginning of the story of the game. There's an attack on their temple, and so Nidus takes the purple egg that Spyro's in and sends them off down a river, and the dragonflies pick them up, and they have, the mama dragonfly has Sparks, and he was born that same day. So, whereas in the original Spyro trilogy, they're kind of just, he's kind of just already there, Sparks is just there without any real rhyme or reason, but he does kind of, he's his own character, and they're pretty much sidekicks to each other in the original telling. In this telling, they're more of brothers, and Sparks is voiced by David Spade, which we'll get into later in the review. So, yeah, so Spyro finds out he's not a dragonfly. It's very much a Tarzan story as well. He's raised by a whole other species, not of his own kind, and he finds out he's one of the few of his own kind.
yeah, I would just say, like, they could probably put 2 and 2 together. It's like, oh, they're tiny little bugs and I'm a giant lizard. How does this work?
So
yeah, we didn't have a freaky night. You're not a kid. You would assume that he would kind of already know this, but
pretty much. It's
I guess like Spyro's just a dense one. He is.
So that's pretty much the story. That's the basic story. There's also an evil dragon named Cinder who's out on the prowl, so she's the villain of the first game. So with that being said, we've got the gameplay.
Alright, the gameplay was pretty fun. It was very I want to say it was kind of simplistic in how you do stuff. Like, you have your 2 basic attacks, like your main melee attack being X, and then your B, the B button being the fire breath, but you can also use Y to do a more concentrated fireball and fire it off your foes, and then you could do R while in the air to do like a ram attack.
Yeah, the original Spyro's controls and all that were also pretty simple. He only had 2 basic attacks, charge and flame. This flame you can use almost indefinitely. I mean, you have a health bar, and you also have a flame, breath bar, because you do get different breaths, which was taken from other games like Spyro Under the Dragonfly and Spyro A Hero's Tale. I think Hero's Tale does it. So you get many different breaths. But the way it's executed, the breath, is that when you first get your first one, flame breath, it's more concentrated, whereas the fire breath in the original Spyro is just more like a burst. But it was one of your main attacks for enemies. So it's pretty cool. And whereas the original has you defeating various enemies in various ways, not all of them you can just ram into or do both, like flaming and ramming into. There's variety is what I'm trying to say with that front. In Legend of Spyro, it's pretty much you can do whatever, melee or ram into them, which ramming is also mapped to the shoulder button to R.
And I'm not sure if this is a thing in the original game, but you get more powers and all that that'll allow you to. In Legend of Spyro, you get more powers, so you can't just breathe just fire. You can also breathe lightning. Pretty sure ice is a possibility.
Yeah, it's fire, electricity, ice, and earth. So, hold on. Before you ask how the hell you breathe earth, it's this kind of sonic energy blast kind of thing.
Ah,
So-
and it just fires rocks at people.
Not so much as rocks. They're concentrated like blasts of energy.
Ah,
So
I was picturing him spitting out
Rocks?
like, rocks and stuff like.
when I was saying that, I saw your face go, wait a minute, how does that work? And I was like, wait, I gotta explain this later. That's how it happens. But
And then with certain enemies, like the different elements could help them. Like with electricity being able to stun enemies, it's not really damage based. It's more of like it just stuns enemies for a while, so how we can get some free hits.
it's very much cosmetic in a way.
Yeah.
So there's from what I remember from this game, it's been a while since I played through the entire game of Legend of Spyro, but from what I remember, there's not really any one circumstance, like scenario or ambush moment, that makes you use a certain element. It's all just whatever you want to use, and whatever you've upgraded as well. There's an upgrade system in this, but just towards the breath, not towards melee or anything.
Yeah, and then on a fun note, Marcelo found a very fun exploit to use, especially on the last ambush before the first boss, in which he used. And he showed me it, I let him take the reins, and I'll have you explain that.
I don't know if this was an intended feature on, Sierra and Chrome's part, but when you upgrade your flame breath, or your electricity breath rather, to a certain extent, to its full extent, you can, how we said, you can blast concentrated little bursts of electricity at enemies and stun them, but during that, if you hold it like for a bit longer, the button to keep electrifying them, and you kind of flick the control stick in any one direction, you can send them flying off and they slide for a while, and it's just something that happens. But for that one particular specific ambush before the first boss in Dante's Freezer, there's this cliffside where there's just nothing, and you can flick them off that way and just kill them. Just boom.
And not
boom.
even the small enemies either. The Dreadwings,
Yeah.
as they're called, the big giant bad enemies,
Yeah.
you could do it to as well. Sure, it's gonna take you a little bit longer, but you can push them off, and then they die, which
It's funny.
it doesn't make sense because they're Dreadwings. You would think they would fly, but
They fly in to sit down and then get ready to attack you, but
Yeah.
they don't fly anywhere. besides
oh,
that.
probably. Well, I guess you can make the argument that they're stunned, and by the time they're unstunned, they're already dead. It's like,
Game logic.
So video game logic. We'll toss it up to you.
It's pretty funny though. But besides that, with the gameplay, yeah, it is more in depth. It's much more. This game's much more of. It's still a platformer in most pretenses of the word, but
But it's definitely more focused around
beat 'em up.
combat.
Yeah, it's a beat 'em up as well. So whereas the original Spyro is just straight up platforming.
Yeah.
So with that being said, aesthetics.
Alright, well the aesthetics, how they're different from the original one. The original one had kind of more cartoony aesthetics.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you want to put it. Like, it wasn't as detailed, and the characters kind of had more of a cartoony look, but with The
Yeah.
Legend of Spyro, since it's a bit more of a serious reboot, the characters have a bit more of a serious looking design to them. I mean, they're still kind of cartoony, but they're a bit more.
In the sense of the art style, it is still very much of that cartoony sense. For certain characters, it's not like they're full on like photorealistic kind of like real monkey characters like enemies attacking you or anything like that. But they are more detailed. They do look a little bit more menacing than the enemies of the original games.
Which was like a guy with a bag, and then he's stealing gems and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the guy that steals the dragon eggs.
The Norks and the Thieves. Yeah, all of them are very much more wacky and out there. These
Yeah, and then plus, with the levels as well, like, the levels in the new game are more kind of like ruins, kind of based around that, and then military fortresses from what I've seen. Again, to kind of go along with the story of it's a bit of a darker story.
Yeah.
And like the Land of the Dragons is like been taken over and all that.
Because you go through the levels, your progression now, you go through the levels in the original Insomniac games through portals. This one is much more interconnected. There's loading screens and all that. It's not exactly Jack and Daxter levels of seamless flow, but they're interconnected and you're going through a world now. So it does seem very much like it's its own world, because it is. So that's pretty cool.
And what about the box cover?
Box cover, let's bring that back up. So as we were saying with A and B and X and Y, obviously that means we're using the GameCube version, so a port or whatever of this game. So it's very simple. The front cover is very simple. It's just got Spyro with some electricity. It's very weird that they're showing off electricity as the main thing here, even though it's pretty much fire from the start. And he's breathing what looks like a purple flame, which never really happens in-game from what I remember, on the back. And you see a shadowy cinder there. So, what do you want to say about this?
I think the box art is pretty good, and I think it kind of sells that this is a bit more of a serious-looking game compared to how the original Spyro looked.
Yeah, we don't have the original right here because I do have the game with me, but it doesn't have I don't have the original case. But I remember it based off memory, and it's got Spyro kind of just standing there in his little like kind of pose. He's a lot more, which we'll get into in the characters aspect of this, but he is much more with that attitude. Not so much as sarcastic like Sonic, but he's very much got like a snarky kind of attitude to him in the original game, whereas here he's more of the wide-eyed, like, where am I and what is all this kind of thing. The more innocent kind of protagonist.
But let's get on to the soundtrack. And I was really kind of impressed with the soundtrack. It has kind of that big orchestral grand sound that I really do enjoy from games. I can probably name a few tracks that I do enjoy.
Go ahead.
Just not from the game, but just in general.
I know,
yeah. Especially one that I really like is Gurman's theme from Bloodborne, in which that theme is just really, really nice. It fits. It gives a very somber tone to the fight, to where like you're not fighting like you're not fighting a boss. You're more like fighting your equal in many ways. So I don't know. It's a really good theme. But how does this connect to Legend of Spyro, even though we're talking about a different game? Like, the music's kind of the same way. It's very thematic, and it's very...
grand, epic.
It has an epic sound to it, with the choir and just kind of more of the big band kind of stuff. I really do enjoy it.
Insomniac's trilogy has Stuart Copeland from The Police doing the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is really awesome. When you talk retro soundtracks with someone like me, I would bring up not just Crash and Josh Mansell, but Stuart Copeland with Spyro. It's awesome. I really love the soundtrack. And the composers for Legend of Spyro are Gabriel Mann and Rebecca Newbold from Spyro Mouth, who did the soundtrack. They were the a cappella group that did Crash to Insanity, so the interconnectivity is pretty crazy on that front. So the two of them, after Spyro Mouth kind of just stopped, sadly, after Crash, they went on to do this soundtrack and the entire trilogy. Because there's A New Beginning, The Eternal Night, and then Dawn of the Dragon. So that's the trilogy for Legend of Spyro, and they do the music for all of them, which is really, really, really awesome. So yeah, they went for it to match the look and this more epic look and all that, and the feel. The music had a bump up as well, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, I really, now I'm going to go over a soundtrack of the game, because you mentioned it, and you actually did a video on it, as you were telling me, about Dante's Freezer soundtrack.
Yeah.
I don't know, I really kind of like that soundtrack with it. It just kind of had that barren feel to it. It's like, ooh, this is kind of a creepy place.
yeah. I love the mood it gives you. Because I went over it, I guess, linked down below, my on Destination Mark, the top 10, my top 10 favorite snow levels. It was the Christmas special I did on my channel. It was like number 3 or something. It was really cool because of just the feel it gives you, so... really nice.
Yeah, and then plus the enemies that are placed there as well.
Yeah.
Being undead, frozen, like demon-looking knights and stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of like how they were designed there.
And those fucking guys I was telling you about, with the axes, the things, the ghoul guys. They start off in armor and they're really heavier looking dudes. And when you get their health bar down, they'll turn into the armor will fall off and they'll be revealed to be these floating ghoul guys, like skeletal dudes.
Yeah, and then
I liked them.
yeah.
I never liked them. They killed me a couple times on certain occasions, but you got them pretty good. I'm actually surprised at how well you were doing at this game, because you say that platformers aren't your forte, and I've seen it before just by having you try to play some certain games.
No. It's not like platformers aren't my forte. I didn't say all platformers. When it comes to platforming, I do alright with 3D platformers. It's 2D platformers that I have big troubles with, and I don't understand why. Like, I can get through a level of Bloodborne, and I can learn the combat system really quick. In fact, I did it with Dark Souls 2. It took me like a couple hours, but afterwards I kind of got the gist of the combat system. But with 2D side-scrollers, I cannot time my jumps right. I just can't do it.
It's very odd. I find that very odd about you, that you can, like, I've told them this off camera, I'm pretty sure on camera before this moment, but like, you can memorize like these combos and like all these things with these other grittier, like much more serious going games. And then with some other games, when it's just time you jump from here to here, like you fall like a lot of the time. It's very weird.
I don't know. I just can't do it. I have a problem with my timing. I guess
that must be what it is. I mean, I don't know, because other games have you time with not even with like quick time events, which we've mentioned on Tomb Raider, but some other, like, I guess bosses have to have you time certain things for certain games like that, right?
Well, but Dark Souls 2 with the I'm sorry to go off topic again, people. It's just kind of going with the conversation. This will end after this. With the Pursuer, you have to kind of time. With the Pursuer boss, he's the second boss in the game. You do have to time when you strike, and you have to, like, if you have a sword or something, I usually do like just 2 attacks and then back off, because he'll do a lot of damage to you, and he'll combo you pretty easily. But he does leave himself open if you know what moves he's gonna do, because there's certain 3 move combos that he does, in which he'll leave him open, and if you're kind of close to him, but not close enough to hit him, you can get a couple hits in, and then you have to back off.
Okay.
So there is some timing, but it's not as delicate. It's just jumping.
Jump here. It's very odd, but I don't know. Video game logic, I guess. Player logic, I don't know.
By the way, we were talking about the soundtrack. So
really good.
Yeah. We said we wouldn't be doing this, but we did it anyway. But it did have a point.
Characters. On to characters. Okay, so...
well, just to end with the soundtrack. The soundtrack was pretty good from what I heard of it. It had a nice orchestral theme to it. And it also had choir in there, too. I don't know, that really sells me. It just makes it seem very grand.
We like to play office music when we're working with Caleb, and I took some tracks from that, and you kind of liked them.
Yeah, I did.
Because fused with all the other things we listen to, like Portal and like Last of Us and all that we have there at the office, having that in there too, it's like, wow, that's from Spyro the Dragon, the reboot, but from a Spyro game. Like, if we didn't tell you anything about the mood and all that, you wouldn't think it was from Spyro.
Yeah,
so it's pretty
of course.
Cool.
Yeah, so the music is very impressive. So now let's get to the characters, and Marcelo could probably.
I'll talk a little bit about them.
Yeah.
So, like I said before with Spyro, he has that kind of snarky, kind of like, bring it on, I'm ready, kind of tone to him.
Like,
in the
this
original.
guy's toast.
Yeah, in their Insomniac Spyro games. But Spyro in this portrayal is more of that innocent, like, who am I and what am I doing here and what is my purpose, like my destiny kind of thing.
Which is actually kind of funny, because guess who plays Spyro in this reboot?
Elijah Wood.
Yeah, you know him from Lord of the Rings.
So there we go.
You know him from other stuff, but Lord of the Rings.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, and then how it kind of starts off is like, oh, I didn't make a Frodo joke when I was playing, I should have. Damn it.
Oh my god.
I wonder if the guys knew, it's like, we have to get Elijah Wood on this. And they were just pulling Frodo jokes, and they're just like, ah. And then with Ignitus, they actually use very well-known voice actors for the characters. Celebrity voice actors. With Ignitus being played by Gary Oldman, in which he's in multiple roles. Like, he was Count Dracula, he was few other characters. He was.
I usually like to think, because he was the first. I think the first movie I ever saw him in was Harry Potter 3.
Oh yeah. He was Sirius Snape.
Black, yeah.
Sirius Black. I almost said Sirius Snape.
Nice.
And then he was also crap. Who's the? I'm a Batman fan. And yet I don't know. Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We got at the same time. We're like, oh, Commissioner something.
Commissioner Gordon. I'm a Batman fan, believe it or not. And I forgot. I'm ashamed.
So, the point being is that there are David Spade as Sparks.
Oh yeah, that's Sparks.
Celebrity voice actors and just legit straight up actors in these roles. But David Spade is just a funny case. They didn't make Sparks talk until they made him talk in Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, and I think I did the impression back then, but he kind of just had this kazoo-like that was literally how it sounded in those games. So he didn't actually talk and speak English, but you had text there. He would do that that was his voice. He didn't start speaking English until Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. A Hero's Tale, where I forgot the guy who did his voice there, but this is his second speaking role technically, and in this game...
By the way, we'll just put the name on here.
Yeah, but it's David Spade in this one. And I think I said this before also in that Spyro rant from Beck and Arc 2, when, I don't know, David Spade has like these roles where he's just that kind of likable asshole kind of guy, and that's how Sparks comes about in this game. So.
But yeah, I will have to talk about the characters a bit. Elijah Wood did alright, and then I kind of like Gary Oldman in this, but David Spade, he doesn't fit. And he kept on bringing me out of it. I didn't even call him by his, when we were playing, it was like, shut up, David Spade, I know.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything to change his voice or anything. You know the roles. You got Cusco, you got, whatever the name of the character is.
Well, no, when he was Cusco from Emperor's New Groove, I didn't think, oh, this is David Spade. I guess from this, I kind of just
Well,
yeah.
many of us who were kids at the time kind of really started seeing David Spade mostly in that movie first. That was my first instance of hearing about David Spade.
Yeah.
And then seeing him in Benchwarmer, seeing him in Rules of Engagement, it's almost the same kind of character every time.
Yeah, with not exactly. With Chris Farley. Yeah, when he did some movies with Chris Farley, he was kind of more of especially in Black Sheep, and then the other movie that was Chris Farley movie. I don't remember it, but I like the movie. I can't remember. I'm just doing awful with names today.
And we're also going off topic again.
But
he doesn't play that cynical role all the time, but from what I've seen him in, he has, and
he kind of has been lately, and
Legend of Spyro is no difference. But of the trilogy, funny enough, other subtle changes in the cast included Cinder, who is voiced by, in the second game, Mae Whitman, and then someone else, like I think Christina Ricci or someone in the third game or something like that. But it's pretty subtle, it's not all that big of a deal. Sparks, though, this was the only game David Spade did Sparks in, because in the second game it was Billy West, who's a really, really well-known voice actor. And then, of all people again to choose, I said this in the Art 2 video, Wayne Brady. Completely different contrast in the third game. And even to the point where they poke fun and break the fourth wall just a little at it, where they ask him in the beginning of the game, because they're already in peril right at the start, and it continues its continuing story. They go, "Are you alright?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing alright. Voice is changing a lot though." And I'm like, there we go. So, it's funny. They poke fun at it, it's whatever.
Yeah, so with this game in particular, I liked a lot of the voice acting. David Spade kind of brought me out of the story a bit. But other than that, the voice acting was pretty good.
Yeah.
For the most part. I'm not saying that I hate David Spade. I just think, he kind of brought me out of it.
Weird casting choice.
Yeah, kind of a weird casting choice. I see what they were going with, but David Spade didn't really do it subtle.
It wasn't the character that had the voice actor enthralled, it was the voice actor that made the character in this sense, because again, Sparks never was portrayed in this fashion until David Spade took the role, so it's odd. It's pretty odd, but for me it's passable. I didn't really care too much. I was just like, well, we need some kind of comedic foil, there we go. So,
alright, and with that,
there's one thing, just one super weird one extra thing I wanted to mention. Real quick, it's not going to take that long. But the audio mixing in this game. The audio mixing was fine in terms of just the levels of how you could hear the music with the sound effects and with the voices. It was all right in the. This is just some real critical thing that I've picked up on. It's all fine and good in the original games. In this game, which I'm pretty sure the second and third games don't have that much of a deal with, but this first game has some issues with the audio mixing because there's times where the music overpowers the voices in cutscenes. I don't know if you realize this. Sometimes it's hard to hear what the characters are saying. So, did you really catch a lot of that?
I didn't catch it, but that probably happens later on in the game, maybe.
Oh, it was happening even in the beginning.
Oh.
There's certain parts where it's a little hard to understand what the characters are saying unless you have
Yeah.
subtitles on, which this game does have. But we were playing with the subtitles off, and there are some moments where I've come to like, because I guess I'm just that big of a Spyro fan, I memorize some of the lines, just because I've played through the game a bunch of times. But even some parts without the subtitles is a little hard to understand, because the audio mixing is really weird. But with all that being said, yeah, that's pretty much
So
it.
how does this compare as a reboot?
Oh, it's awesome. I love Legend. Which is funny, because not a whole lot of people, of Spyro fans, clung on to this idea. They thought it was really weird and really just not fitting of Spyro. So not a whole lot of people took to this, a liking to this reboot. But I think it fits in awesome. I think they did a really good job.
So I haven't played. I'm not a Spyro fan. I have played a bit of the first ever game of Spyro, and this is kind of a huge leap from the reboot. The reboot adds a lot more to it, in my opinion. While as the first game, which again comes with limitations, and that being it was Insomniac's first ever game, it's understandable that it feels a bit more small and a lot more focused in what it was trying to do, which was a platformer. With this one, it's a bit bigger and it wants to do a lot of stuff. And in most respects, it does it well. Though there are some problems with the audio mixing, and then again the weird casting choice with a couple characters.
One other small thing again for me is the very first Spyro, Insomniac Spyro, is very much in that vein of Naughty Dog with Crash. There's no real tutorial. The dragons that you save give you tips, but you can totally just ignore them and just hit X to skip. So that's pretty cool, because if you're a veteran and already know it, or you just don't want to hear them, you don't have to, which is pretty cool.
With this game, it kind of forces you into a big tutorial.
There's a beginning tutorial. Then there's those, every time you save one of the Dragon Guardians, you have to go through their little tutorial or training, as they call it in-game, for getting used to your different breaths. So.
Yeah, and I wish they were a bit smaller and not so well detailed, even after we start playing the game.
For the training section?
Yeah, for the training sections, I would want them a little bit more shorter and just more straight to the point, but...
Yeah. So
but other than that, the game was really fun.
If those are our biggest issues, then the game itself is pretty well done. So.
Yeah. So with that, time to go to our ratings.
Yeah, so verdict. Mine is a 4.5 out of 5. Because, not a perfect 5, only because of those kinds of issues. For this first game, I'm pretty sure from what I remember, they ironed them out pretty okay in the second and third games. Actually, the third game plays a little different. The second game plays pretty similar to the first game. But the third game goes a little more dynamic. There's a different, I think they use a different engine because everything is much more detailed. It was 2008 at that point in the third game, so they had a lot more time to develop stuff and do stuff. So, but for this game, it's really well done. So 4.5.
So I'm gonna have to go a little bit lower and say it's around a 4 out of 5. And it's a good game. I like the soundtrack. The soundtrack is the best thing for me about this game. It gave me a really good impression. The gameplay was kind of fun too. A little bit more complex compared to the initial Spyro game. Yeah. And again, just mostly David Spade's voice acting just kind of threw me off at times. And just other than that, the game was pretty good. I like to play it a bit more, and I actually did kind of play a bit more because we weren't going to be able to get to the first boss, but I was like, no, I beat 2 bosses in the first Spyro game, I want to fight a boss, and the Ice King was actually kind of a cool boss. He did have 3 layers to him, like Dr. Shemp?
Yeah.
Dr. Shemp from the first game. And instead of hitting him with 1 hit, though, it was more like, yeah, he has 3 health bars, you have to bring him down.
That's the one thing which we didn't mention in characters, and since it's already the end of the episode, we're not going to mention it, go into a lot of detail, but just comparing again the original, which we didn't do with Tomb Raider, so we still apologize for that, but for the future reboots later in this arc, we're going to be playing the original, at least one of the original games, and then the reboot to compare and contrast. But again, the bosses in this game, in the first game rather, the first Insomniac game, are very simple, but I do like the layouts, that the layouts are more of like a level than just straight up, here's the arena, here's the boss. They're more, there's more meat to it. Because one thing I did hear some people say is, while they're good and it's pretty just nice to play through the bosses of the first game, they do feel a little anticlimactic, which I never felt they were, but I can totally understand why they would think that, because it does feel that way, but I just don't at the same time get that when I play. Not understand why, I mean, but just I don't get that when I play it. So it's very odd, but I do understand. But with that being said, differences and stuff. But the first game's good. This game's good too. So with that being said, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I would really recommend this game. This game is pretty good.
It's really fun. So with that being said, we're going on our break now, and Twitter. Look for us on Twitter when the date that we're coming back. So with that being said,
and then sorry guys, we kind of rambled a bit and we kind of went over time.
It's like 28, 29 minutes now at this point.
Yeah,
sorry. But
we couldn't resist. We couldn't resist this time around.
Pretty much.
But anyway, I'm Weston.
I'm Marcelo.
And this was Trash Talk.
See you guys later.
It's time to unleash the true dragon within you.
The Legend of Spyro, A New Beginning. Rated everyone 10 and up.